Hi, I'm Daniel Nyman. On behalf of the Forum for Healthcare Strategists, as well as our colleagues at Monigle, welcome and thank you for joining us for your Ultimate Healthcare Business, Brand, Experience, and Culture Playbook. In today's webinar, you'll hear highlights from Humanizing Brand Experience Volume 7. This newly released report from Monigle can help you unlock opportunities you can leverage today and tomorrow to drive business, brand, experience, and culture change in your organization. Here to guide us through the highlights are two senior executives from Monigle, Grant Mason, Executive Director, Insights, and Dave Middendorf, Executive Director of Health, Care, and Wellness. Before I turn the program over to Grant and Dave, one quick note. Attendees are participating in listen-only mode, but you can still ask questions. If you have a question, please enter it into the question and answer pane located on the bottom of your screen at any time. Our speakers will respond to as many questions as we can in the time that we have. With that, I'll turn the program over to Dave to kick us off.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're looking forward to taking you through some amazing data today and answering as many questions as we can. And before we dive into the report, just wanted to reintroduce ourselves as Monigle. We've been building brand experiences for nearly 50 years, and behavioral insight has always been at the core of that. And it's really the impetus for this work that we're sharing today. As we've built brands over the years, just seeing so many opportunities to expand the perspective of what brand really is and how we can impact brand experience. And that's really at the core of our mission of humanizing brands to move people. I was reflecting back on when we first launched the first edition about 6.5 years ago, and the headline that we led with was, "You're doing it wrong." And it was really a wake-up call to the industry that we needed to be thinking about brands differently and the way that we were engaging people. And the good news is that today we're doing it better, but it and better has changed. It's different today. We're finding ourselves in a moment of transformation. There is rebounding engagement. Loyalty is starting to really bud around systemness. But there's also a lot of challenges and opportunities ahead. So we really want to dig into the information today, share what we've learned, and hopefully answer some questions and inspire you along the way. We've got a lot to cover, several different topics that will go throughout this report, and Grant and I will kind of ping pong back and forth covering different topics.
All right, well, let's dive into the first topic. The first chapter is really exciting. We've actually seen a really strong improvement in consumer engagement in health and wellness this year. And we know that because we've been tracking healthcare engagement based on our index going back since before COVID. And you can see that engagement score of 105 is the highest it's been in 5 years. So we're now getting back to that same level of excitement and passion about people's health and wellness as we saw pre-COVID. And when we dig into that engagement index, there's a whole series of attributes behind it. You can see those on this screen here, and they've all gone up. You know, whether it's people's emotional value and that peace of mind they get from healthcare services or treatment, or whether it's that topical interest, that appetite to read about health and wellness, more people setting personal goals than before, more people talking about healthcare and wellness to their friends and family. The engagement is back to that level we haven't seen for a good 4 or 5 years. So really exciting stuff. We also look at engagement by market. You know, obviously we have a significant study, significant sample size where we evaluate over 200 brands in 60 plus markets. And we always make sure as a part of that analysis to look at how engaged consumers are in each of these markets. Now, as per usual, Miami is the most engaged market in the study. It's always up there. But if you have a look on this large eye chart here, you might be able to see your market here as well. I think the most interesting shift we've seen in the last year is actually in Texas. We've seen all Texas markets see significant growth in that consumer engagement in healthcare and wellness. So Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, all big jumps. And I think the other exciting piece that goes along with this puzzle is people are now willing to spend even more for the best healthcare services. So you can see that symbolic value over time here trending upwards and getting back to that highest level it's ever been at 67%. Obviously, people are willing to pay more for the best care. And this is a great opportunity for us when we think about our own services and how we can tap into this. And candidly, that's why brands like Forward are doing so well. I think it's really interesting when we evaluate disruptor brands with a more concierge model type of approach. Consumers are really engaged with them. And I think there's lots we can learn from the Forward-based model, as well as the likes of Parsley and Kindbody, who all actually score higher than the best health system brand in our study this year. So we'll talk more about them later on, but there's definitely an opportunity here to really deliver that extra value that consumers are looking for from their healthcare partners.
I also wanted to take this opportunity this year to have a bit of a back to basics conversation about brand as a value driver. And I think it's really important because so many of us are in these battles now for resources, and it's easy for brand and marketing and experience to be deprioritized while there are other things that the organization is worried about. And so we just want to reground ourselves in what we mean when we talk about brand, and really the recognition that it's this multidimensional composition of elements that ultimately enables people to more easily and consistently choose you among of all the alternatives that are out there. And that idea is really what's at the core of the Humanizing Brand Experience model. We built this model to look at the holistic perspective of how people engage and interact with brands, not just the marketing that they might receive, or not just the clinical care and interactions they might have, but all dimensions of it. And it's a model built on a white paper that started to look at these different dimensions. And so in this model, we're looking at attributes such as the intellectual ones. So how people actually think about your brand. These are kind of the bread and butter, some of the most functional attributes of when we think about brand measurement and performance. But then we also look at the emotional components. So how people feel about your brand or how your brand makes them feel. And then ultimately the sensorial component, which is the way that people sense your brands across all of their different senses, the way they see you, the smells and sights that show up as they engage and interact with your brand, and then also the behavioral aspects. So what people actually do with your brand. And this is such an important idea here because this is what relates to the rankings that everyone's so eager to look at, and we'll talk about later in the report. But the higher your ranking, the higher your brand score on this model, the more likely you are to drive choice and advocacy among consumers. And so if you look at what are the top variables from our model that actually are driving that choice and advocacy performance, here is that core set. So these are the variables that if you needed the basic playbook of what to do to be the strongest brand possible, these are the things to focus on. You see things like interactivity, so making all your interactions positive. Enhancement, making life better. Buzz, the way that people say positive things about you. And then also the people, the quality of your people and being the best people, which we'll talk more about in a couple slides. These things are incredibly important. And you'll see a lot of these things come from the behavioral category, which many of these things maybe marketing doesn't traditionally own. But it shows that there's this importance of building those bridges and building those connections across your organization to be able to drive this holistic version of brand experience across all aspects of how people engage with you. It's also incredibly important to know that this data, this humanizing brand experience model, is correlated with HCAHPS. So something that likely all of your leaders are focused on. And there's the understanding here that the better you perform on this humanizing brand experience model, the better you're going to perform on your HCAHPS reimbursement. So there is a direct financial link to that top line performance that this model can drive. But when you think about brand and this idea of choice really only matters if people have a choice in the first place. I think there's common misperceptions from the past that people don't really have that much choice in healthcare, and that's wrong. And I think we're all seeing that is not the case today. So 86% of our respondents disagreed with this statement that they only use their current healthcare organization because they have little choice. So they're out there making decisions. They're out there switching, in fact. We saw that 50% of the people who switched said that they actually had control over their switching. So the idea is that to actually maintain and grow market share, we have to give people reasons to switch to us. We also have to give them their own reasons for staying with us and not switch to an available alternative.
All right, well, let's jump into our third chapter, which is really digging into the idea of systemness and how consumers value health systems specifically. And they really do value health systems. Every year, we've been asking consumers to tell us whether they would prefer a health system or an independent for the following service lines. And what you can see here is that health system preference year after year for every service line growing. In the last year, especially, every service line has gone up, but especially the likes of urgent care and pediatrics, you're seeing a real swing towards health system preference over independence. So why? Why are consumers telling us they do prefer a health system? Well, we asked them and they gave us in their own words their reasons why. Now, obviously, we had a load of quotes like this, just a small sample of the quotes we collected. But in essence, what we're seeing is people telling us that health systems give them more staff, more locations, more resources, that health systems are better outcomes, better technology. And also they make it easier. They should make it easier to get an appointment, easier to access medical records, easier to move from one location within the system to another. So those are the major themes that we're seeing come through in these quotes. And obviously there are some great examples in their own words on this page here. What I found fascinating is when we dig into these benefits of systemness by generation. You know, Dave's going to talk a lot more later on about Gen Z and really their needs, and certainly how different their expectations are for healthcare brands. But you can already see on this page how systemness and the benefits of systemness translates quite differently depending on people's age and generation. Certainly boomers and the silent generation, they value the more that health systems bring. More convenient locations, more resources, more staff, more technology. But when you actually dig into those younger generations, they're much more focused on the perceived ease and better quality that should come from a health system. So it definitely impacts how we message as we think about these different generations and their different needs and expectations that go along with health systems. And the last slide I want to throw up here, because I think these stats are really interesting and a good case for systemness. Systemness absolutely builds loyalty. You know, if you look at some of these stats, for example, 64% of people in the US feel it is easier to stay within the same healthcare system than to switch to a new system. 59% said they would prefer to stay within the same healthcare system even when they do switch. And actually 2/3 of people indicate they are confident they know which healthcare system their provider is affiliated with. Now, obviously, we'd love that to be 100%, but I think consumers are more educated than we give them credit for.
So next, we're going to dig into people. I think people have been top of mind for the last couple of years as we've dealt with the challenges of burnout and labor shortages. And last year, we showed that people were aware that those things were happening. And we just wanted to reiterate just how important people are. If you go back to the data that we showed just a couple slides ago about those top 10 drivers in the Humanizing Brand Experience model, you can see best people is number 4, and that's even up from number 5 in the previous year. What you see on the right side of this chart is that best people is the number 1 correlated driver to HCAHPS performance. So these things represent something that is core to that idea of choice and advocacy and reimbursement. And it just shows how important this idea of people is in your opportunity, in your entire organization. And we need to think about best people differently. So this year we asked our respondents, well, who really is best people? When you hear or if you were to describe a healthcare organization as having best people, who would you be referring to exactly? So there are certainly some respondents who think that this is just doctors and physicians and specialists. But if you look on the right side of this chart, you can see nearly 42% of consumers are saying best people actually is anyone I encounter at the organization or everyone who works at the organization in the first place. So what this really illuminates is that opportunity to amplify all of your people. Think about how are your people building your brand and sharing your brand in those important moments of engagement. And looking at what actually embodies best people, how do best people behave, it's really a balance. consumers want that mix of competency and expertise, but also that level of being kind, caring, and supportive. And so you can see some of the quotes here that actually get into this idea of a team. They have the capacity to take people seriously and continually learn. They are kind and have excellent customer service skills. The office is a team who works well together. So best people really spans a much broader purview than maybe we've considered in the past. And referencing back to this idea of this budding loyalty for systemness, well, it's really interesting to see how much people are actually loyal to the people at the system than the organization itself. So 59% are actually more loyal to the people they're engaging with at your organizations than your organization itself. So just another reason to be thinking about the people programs, attracting and retaining the best talent, and really activating your brand through them.
Okay, well, we've talked a lot already about some of the exciting trends we're seeing in the data. I think one of the less exciting trends that we're all aware of are access challenges. I think that what's incredibly difficult right now is this incredible engagement and demand we're seeing for healthcare come back, and yet at the same time, people can't get in. We actually we asked people to evaluate their current healthcare organization in terms of how well they're delivering on these expectations, whether it be quality of care, friendliness of staff, willingness to listen. And you can see right down at the bottom there, appointment availability and wait times on site. We are not meeting people's expectations right now in terms of getting them in for their appointments. And this, of course, causes a problem. It doesn't just cause a problem for consumers, it causes a problem for us. Loyalty will only go so far. In fact, 68% of people said, I am not willing to put my health on hold just to stay loyal to the same healthcare organization. So you can see that the issues with access can really impact people's loyalty to your organization. And looking at some of the brands that have dropped the most in the rankings this year, a lot of them are due to their lack of access. And people have just had to go elsewhere and given up on that relationship. So I think this is a really important number and a stark wake-up call for us in terms of the reality we're facing right now. Big demand for healthcare, low supply. So what can we do about it? Well, we asked consumers again, well, what do you think would really help improve access from your perspective? And we gave them a list of options. And at the top, of course, shorter wait times for an appointment is the number one. And just below wait times is just more appointment availability, either more providers, extended appointment hours, or just more availability during the day. But here's the thing, and I know we look at some of these challenges and go, well, we can't do anything about those things at the top there. And of course, it is very hard to create more appointment availability. But what we can do is address some of the opportunities in the middle. Can we make online appointment scheduling better? That would go a long way to helping consumers. Can we have more people pick up the phones and just communicate and talk to consumers and help them know where they are in the wait list? Better communication and updates regarding wait times is also going to go a long way to helping consumers. Better telehealth services, more parking. So there are things we can do to address this access issue, and a lot of it is around communication and expectation management. I also think we should stop and take a look outside of the category for a minute, because there are some great lessons we can learn from what retail does in terms of managing volumes and managing supply and demand. So if we kind of take a leaf out of the retail playbook, one strategy we could maybe look at is the abandoned healthcare car. When you're shopping online and you start to add things to your car and then you leave and walk away and you get that email the next day going, hey, you forgot something. Can we maybe embrace a solution like that, especially when we know there are lower volumes in a particular service line? Can we retarget people who were already on our website looking and exploring possibly booking an appointment for that particular service? So that's one way we could do it. I think another way is a classic retail strategy, which is promotion. Can we give a promotional nudge? Again, pushing people, nudging them towards certain service lines, certain locations where there are lower volumes, where we have availability, and giving them that financial incentive to take us up on it. And then I think the last tactic here, which is honestly, I think the best one we should already all be considering, is your table is ready. This is that classic solution we see from restaurants already. When you're waiting for your table, and rather than stand outside the restaurant for an hour, 2 hours, who knows how long, you can go away, get a text message, and they'll tell you your table is ready. You saw on the previous screen that wait times on site is a massive issue for people. We can take that away. The technology is there already for us to send them that text reminder. The doctor is ready to see you now. So just some interesting ideas to try and think of as we're trying to address this access problem that is clearly evident in this particular chapter.
I think it's so important to address the problem in the first place, because not only is it frustrating trying to get in and gain access to healthcare, but the fact is that we're seeing it actually create delay in receiving care. So you can see here that trend of delaying care, and this was care that was recommended and you thought you needed, is going back up. So it's going back up towards levels that we saw during COVID. So this is, a serious health risk. And, again, this challenge that sits at the core of why people are delaying getting care in the first place is that difficulty getting an appointment. We've seen a 13% increase in that since 2022. Of course, cost is still always going to be a factor, but this is concerning that people are actually not getting the care that they need because they can't get in. And we've looked at this across our different segments, and we'll talk a little bit more about our segments if you're not familiar with them. But you can see that the different segments who have more frequently delayed their care, we've got habitual strugglers, who are those folks who are actually dealing with chronic issues. The fact that they are delaying care can really result in incredibly negative health impacts. Dr. Dodgers, that's a group that we've talked about in many reports, and it's no surprise that they're delaying care. That's kind of their style. But it's also a group that we need to be engaging with and making sure that they're getting the care that they need. So lots of challenges across the segments. And when we look at the flip side of this and looked at this through the lens of choice, and we talked about this idea of choosing to switch, we can see that those segments who have actually switched are coming from those segments who are less likely to delay. So we see our wellness influencers, our positive preventatives who are always on top of getting all of their preventative care. Those are the folks who are making decisions to not delay their care. And wellness influencers represent an incredibly valuable segment to be loyal to your brand, because they are in fact influencers. They are out there talking about the experiences that they have in healthcare and can be attracting people to your brand. And at this moment, if they can't get in, they are likely going to think about switching away from you. So a lot of tough data. I think we are in this challenging moment where it really presents this opportunity to rethink the role of conventional marketing. What is our role right now in the healthcare marketing landscape, and how do we refocus our playbooks on maintaining and continuing to build relationships with consumers, hopefully as they don't navigate away from us.
Okay, on to the next chapter. I am going to refresh you all on our segmentation. I know Dave kind of teed up a few of the segments previously, but I think it's important we all think about consumers as human beings. Think about the person behind the condition and behind the patient characteristics that we obviously have in our database. We fundamentally believe in an attitudes-based segmentation, and that's what you're looking at here. And our segmentation uncovered 7 unique segments in the population today. Now, these segments, high level, have very different needs and relationship with their health, care, and wellness. And we are seeing particularly a big fragmentation right now in the industry between some of those next gen needs and some of those kind of trusting traditionalist needs that have always been there. And I think the time is right for us to be more targeted with our marketing, to be more personalized with our content, and really make sure we are giving these unique segments the messages and the services that they want. A mass marketing approach in healthcare, it does not work as well as it used to. So let me go high level through each of these segments, just as a reminder for you all. The wellness influencers are one of the most important and most valuable segments to healthcare systems. Not only are they one of the biggest segments in the population, they are very engaged in their health and wellness, and they are willing to spend more on healthcare than any other segment. But most importantly, they are the influential segment. That means if you recruit them and engage them, they will actually bring along the other segments with them as well. The habitual strugglers, conversely, are struggling with their health. They have very habitual health behaviors and they need our help. They're already engaged in our healthcare services today. And most importantly, how we communicate with them and deliver on their emotional needs especially is key. They obviously are struggling, they often feel judged, and they need help. And it isn't just that practitioner help, it's emotional support as well. The positive preventatives love healthcare. They're very preventative in their mindset, very proactive. Every single possible screener or wellness checkup they'll come in for. So they're a high value segment because they do engage in preventative care and have that positive relationship with their healthcare provider. Conversely, whole health managers don't trust us. In fact, they'll go to healthcare providers as a last resort. They are all about self-care first. They will leverage Google, they will do their own research. They'll then engage with alternative and holistic care providers before coming to a healthcare system. But they are very engaged in wellness and they are very influential and they skew younger. So they're an interesting segment because they don't have a great relationship with us, but obviously they are of value if you think about the future. The trusting traditionalists skew a lot older, and they are just as the name suggests. Whatever we tell them to do, they will do. They are very trusting of healthcare systems. They've probably had the same doctor for the last 30 years. They're not going to be inclined to go on Google and do their own research. And they absolutely have the most positive relationship with us of all these segments. The problem is every year they're getting smaller. So that trusting traditionalist relationship we've got used to seeing over the years, it is going to shrink year after year. The unapologetically unhealthy are the most disengaged segment. You couldn't drag them to see a doctor if you tried. They definitely skew older, and healthcare and wellness is the lowest priority for them. Certainly they are not healthy in terms of their behaviors, and they will only engage us when they absolutely have to. And then last, but definitely not least, the doctor dodgers, another really interesting segment. They are a large segment, they skew younger, they are one of the most ethnically diverse groups and also more blue collar. And I think it's a really interesting group because they are avoiding care, but not because they're not engaged in their healthcare. They're avoiding care because we make it too hard for them. They have lots of other challenges and priorities in their lives. And, you know, they're going to put their kids' healthcare first. They're going to put their work first. And if we can't make healthcare easy to access for them, they're just going to drop out and avoid it. So they're a really interesting group as we think about the future as well, especially because they do skew younger. So as a very high level walk through the segments, you can see on this page here, the size of those segments in the US population and how they've changed over time. And I think the good news is that the wellness influencers are growing again this year, which aligns with that increased healthcare engagement we talked about at the start of the presentation. I think what's also interesting is that continual gradual decline in trusting traditionalists. Every year they're getting slightly smaller and smaller. But certainly the habitual strugglers, the wellness influencers, and the doctor dodgers make up the bulk of the population today. And I think what's really important is the impact segmentation can have. You know, we recently did a presentation at HMPS with our partners, Virtual Health, who actually took our segmentation and applied it to their patient database. That empowered them to send more personalized content to all of those people in their database based on their human needs and their underlying health and wellness attitudes. And it worked. I mean, they had incredible engagement and success with those more personalized campaigns. You can see they actually had 13% higher open rate lift than ever before, and double the usual conversion rate lift by sending more personalized content, leveraging our segmentation. So the outcomes of this type of approach and thinking do absolutely pay off when they're applied. And last but not least, if you want to take the segmentation yourself and see what segment you fall into, you can do it right now. Please pull out your phones and quickly grab the QR code. It will take you to a link where you can complete our survey to see what segment you are. And obviously, if you just want to grab the link now, you can do it after the presentation, or you can do it while Dave's walking through the next chapter.
So we just spent all this time talking about attitudinal segments. So why are we now talking about generations? And I think it's incredibly important to just kind of level set on where these generations are and what do we mean by generational shifts. I've been in several conversations in the past year where health system executives are almost making light of millennials and the fact that they don't understand them and they're really not, it's not time to engage with them. And you know, millennials are entering their 40s and have adult children. The same thing is starting to happen with Gen Z. They're getting older. They're starting to form relationships with healthcare, but more so they've formed relationships with wellness. And they are kind of falling into this, like Grant said, the Gen Zs are a bigger part of Dr. Dodgers. So we can see in that top line there that the biggest proportion of Dr. Dodgers comes from the younger generation. And so again, it's easy when you're younger to be a Dr. Dodger, but as they begin to formulate their own healthcare identity, I think what's concerning is that they're formulating that identity without, you know, your health system brands as part of it. They're more willing to avoid that, but focus on a bigger, broader idea of wellness and engage with other brands. Many of them, the disruptors that we nodded to earlier in the presentation. Then we think about it again through this lens of delayed care. We can see that nearly 42% of Gen Z has delayed healthcare that was recommended to them that they thought they actually needed. So these are, you know, again, critical moments where people have been recommended to get care, but they're not taking that next step of engaging with us, or they're not able to make that access happen. We talked about the different profile of what they actually even want to see our systems and offering the types of benefits of making it easy and making it better. But we also have to think about this in the context of emerging health risks. Again, the idea is that the unfortunate thing is that we're seeing, you know, cancer rates increase in younger and younger generations, along with all sorts of other chronic conditions that this generation might be missing the boat on care that's going to greatly impact their future health and well-being. And it really comes down to this data point that is incredibly concerning. And it's that 43% of this generation doesn't actually trust their providers to make the right decisions for them. So that's incredibly alarming. It shows that they are entering into these relationships with the idea that they're not likely going to get the best result. And a lot of this is built through the fact that there's a different pathway to building trust with this generation than others. So you can see on the left here that the things that actually drive the trust relationship for them is very distinct from the other generations. They're thinking about things like empathy and kindness, responsiveness, appointment follow-up, ability to explain what's happening or what is happening next. All of those things came before quality of care. And we really want to kind of highlight this as a starting point for building the relationships with this generation, because they are going to need you, and they are in those moments where they're going to have formative interactions with healthcare organizations. And right now you can see how health systems are performing on these expectations for this generation, and it's not great. So all those orange dots on the left are representing Gen Z and They're saying that they're not getting the best quality of care. They're not seeing the empathy and kindness. They're not seeing you deliver on a lot of those things that are actually necessary to build trust with them. So just a huge opportunity to be thinking about how are we actually going to engage with these folks as they continue to need more and more from our healthcare organizations. So with that, we want to talk about what are the 3 keys to the future. And I think these things apply across all generations and all segments. These are kind of broader trends that we've seen that really unlock what we can do with our healthcare and wellness brands into the future. And those 3 key things are personalization, wellness, and listening. So we really believe this is the path for building that more consumer-oriented human relationship with people. We know that personalization is incredibly important, and it's been successful in driving connections. We talked about the virtual health example. We're just having those targeted communications allow people to be seen, feel more like a priority and more like they're being treated as an individual. Personalization is top of the list in terms of things that would gain trust. And when we think about what types of personalized healthcare experiences that people want, there's a whole list, obviously, because it's very personal and unique. But people are thinking about things like health and wellness plans that are tailored to their specific needs, having a dedicated care team to meet their needs. And I think the important takeaway here is that it's not about having all of these things available and trying to meet every single expectation at every point, but really focusing in on what are the things that you as an organization are going to make a priority. What aligns with your brand positioning, your place in the market, and how you are going to uniquely deliver personalized experiences for your consumers. The second thing that we want to talk about is wellness. Wellness is certainly on the rise. We can't escape broader wellness conversations and just a broader wellness trend. And when we look at some of these reasons for distrust, the thing that people are reacting to here is that healthcare organizations are pushing medicine too quickly instead of offering holistic options. They're not worried about getting at the root cause. So some of these more kind of medicine prescription-based approaches that a lot of people are expecting are those things that are actually driving some of the mistrust. And in fact, when we ask people about how much they value this holistic healthcare experience, we see that growing year over year again. So wellness is extremely important. It's also something that has changed dramatically in our HCAHPS correlation analysis. So when we did this correlation back in 2020, wellness was 25th in its ranked impact on the correlation. And when we look at it today, it's right there at number 2, right behind best people. So wellness has incredibly broad impacts that we need to be thinking about. How do we make that core to our brand, to our offering, and the relationships that we create? And then finally, listening. So listening and understanding is one of those things that is key to driving and earning trust. And it's really how we should be thinking about our brands, right? That a brand is really a two-way conversation. It's a shared asset between us and our consumers and the people that use it. So that two-way conversation and listening is going to be key. And again, more data on how willingness to listen is right up there at the top of what's going to drive trust. And right above that, you can also see delivering on their promises. So again, the idea that we're listening to people, understanding where they're coming from, but then ultimately delivering on those things that they're telling us, and really focusing on that ongoing feedback loop so people feel like they are part of our brands and we are part of their lives, that will really build the type of relationships we want to see in the future. So with that, I will turn it over to Grant to talk more about the framework itself.
Yeah, we're about to show you the best healthcare brands in the US. But before we do that, I want to give you a bit of background as to how we get to that ranking. We take a very scientific approach. You know, Dave kind of alluded to this earlier on, but we have a brand experience model, and we call it the Humanizing Brand Experience model, that we use to essentially score every single healthcare brand in the US based on consumer ratings. Now, creating a brand score and quantifying people's brand relationship is not an easy thing. We've spent a long time developing and optimizing this framework. It's based on some of the latest social science that really tells us that human beings build relationships through all of their senses. And you can see on the left-hand side here that when we evaluate healthcare brands in the study, we're looking at not just what people think about the brand and how they feel about them, but how they sense the brand and what they do with them behaviorally. So we take a lot of data, a lot of feedback across a whole range of attributes, feed them into our model, and that structural equation model creates a single score. And it's that score that dictates the rankings you're about to see. And I should also say that score, that brand score, is highly predictive of behavior. In fact, it's able to predict consumer behavior nationally in healthcare up to 75%. So the brand score and the rankings are very meaningful as it relates to behavioral outcomes. And I'll walk you through those brand rankings in the next section. So let's have a look at the top 10 brands, really exciting. University of Iowa Healthcare, they are the #1 brand in the US out of 209 healthcare brands we evaluated. So big kudos to them. They're obviously doing something well. And, you know, they have been here before, at least close. They were 3rd last year. And in fact, all of the top 3 brands you're looking at here have all been in the top 3 before. UAB have jumped back up in the rankings. They're now in 3rd spot. That's a significant growth for them. 17th last year, back up to 3rd. Ohio Health, also incredible brand, #2 this year. They were also #2 last year, so they're holding that 2nd place position. In terms of the rest of the top 10, it won't surprise you to see big brand names like Mayo and Johns Hopkins coming in at 6th and 7th. I think it's really interesting to see how much University of Utah Health have grown. You know, they're one of the biggest improvers on our list. They actually jumped up 39 spots from the previous year into 9th place. University of Kansas Health System also saw improvement. They're coming in at 8th, and that's their first time in the top 10 since 2020. Northwestern Medicine secures their highest ever rank at 5th, as does Mass General Brigham at 4th. UR Medicine closes out the top 10. And if you go to the next screen, you can see the next set of brands on our rankings. Now we have quite a lot of rankings to show you. I'll leave them up so you can try and find your brand and have a little bit of a look around. But I will call out some top performers. I think a notable mention on this page is definitely Froda and Medical College of Wisconsin. They've jumped up 37 spots into 12th. Texas Health Resources have jumped up 24 spots into 16th. And Penn State Health is actually a new entrant this year. This is the first year we evaluated them. And they're coming in at 15th. So really good work for them. Some other good performers as well that I should just tell you on this first screen you're looking at here include UCLA Health. They jumped up 43 spots to 29th. BJC are at 38th. That's a significant improvement for them. You can also see Cedar Sinai up there as well. And UC Health have also seen a good improvement too. So those are the biggest movers. If you go on to the next screen, again, some more brands for you to pour over. I'll quickly call out some of the strong performers here. In fact, 2 of our biggest movers are on this page. Health Partners and OHSU Healthcare have seen the biggest movement up the rankings year over year. So they've actually gone up around 60 ranks into 62nd spot and 64th spot respectively. So well done to those brands. Goshen Health has also really improved as well. They're coming in at 103rd on this list. And then on this page, Hackensack, good growth for them. They've gone up 50 ranks into 111th spot as well. And again, just give you a chance to kind of look over this list to try and find the brand that you're interested in. I probably should have mentioned on the previous page as well that Presbyterian has also seen really significant growth. They've gone up 46 spots into 102nd position. And then if you flick onto the next screen, again, you can see there's a lot of brands here, but these are the biggest movers that I just mentioned. And certainly, you know, kudos to any brand on this page here to jump up 50 plus ranks, 40 plus ranks in a year. Obviously, there's a lot of factors behind that type of performance, but certainly these are the brands we see the biggest momentum behind. do want to call out the disruptors, though. We mentioned this earlier on. We do put a series of disruptor brands through our brand model. We don't put them in the main rankings because they have a slightly different model of care. But on this page here, you can see there are actually 6 disruptor brands who get a brand score from our model better than the University of Iowa Healthcare. Kindbody, Parsley, Maven, Forward, Carbon Health, and One Medical all have incredible brand scores. And were we to put them in that previous ranked list, they would all come in above the #1 spot.
Thanks, Grant. There's so much information here. We wanted to spend the last couple of minutes just kind of summarizing some key takeaways and things to be considering for the next year, and what do you do with this information. The first one really relates back to that thing about best people, and there's just such an opportunity to supercharge all of them. So thinking strategically about how you're actually building relationships with HR. Many of you I know have done this, and you work closely as partners, but making sure that our people are actually out there telling our story and being that representative and that ambassador of our brand experience is hugely important. We also need to get our employee story straight. So again, thinking through the lens of HR and employee value propositions of what is it that we are offering, and what is our compelling story for people who might consider to come work for us and to stay with us. So I think that's a hugely impactful place for marketers can have a great partnership. And ultimately, don't let the brand word get in the way. So we've worked with plenty of organizations where brand just doesn't mean the same thing it does to us, and maybe there's negative connotations around that word. So choose another word. Think about the relationship that we're building. Think about culture. It doesn't matter. We just want to have you be able to make the impact that you can across the people conversation. So this goes back to the idea of systemness, and really thinking about how do we start to set the table of the future of systemness around benefits of not just more, but easier and better, and really building loyalty, especially for the next generations, around those ideas. So I think there's the key idea of starting with your business strategy and making sure you're understanding what your system is being built to do. Where are your strengths that emerge from your business strategy, your real estate strategy, how you're actually growing and evolving and operating. And then making sure that you're really clear about your positioning of who you are and what you are trying to achieve as a system. Think about your systemness as a core part of that positioning of your brand platform strategy, of your story. It should be clear on so everyone can understand what we mean by who we are as a system in the first place. And then think about understanding the actual experiences that people are having with you. So make sure that we are actually delivering on those promises and proving it to our consumers and patients about who we are and what we deliver as a system. The third thing is, again, thinking about the access challenge and understanding where those people are going, understanding what job is to be done as a marketing and brand team in this world where access challenges are colliding with the desire for engagement. So really, again, thinking about that journey mindset, understand where people are going when they encounter access challenges. What choices are they making? Are they going to alternatives? Are there ways to bring them back? Because that really relates to the second point about thinking about this, entire value equation that's associated with, what happens when we lose someone in those access moments, and really making sure that we're delivering the experience that builds value over time. And again, the opportunity to really lead this charge for marketing. There are places where you have the opportunity to jump out there and take the lead. There are places where I think you can influence and, again, build those bridges and lead other groups to see things as new opportunities. That's really something that marketers can excel at. The fourth one, is really just thinking about that next generation consumer. And there's a couple of basic questions to ask yourself is, what do we stand for, and why should that consumer care about it? What makes us a place where people can be their best selves and deliver the best experiences? And how are we delivering better or different experiences than all the alternatives that are out there? So these are core brand questions, but we need to think about it through the lens of who this next generation consumer and next generation employee is, because they're not going anywhere, and they are going to be our consumers of the future. And then finally, really keeping it human. So going back to those 3 keys to the future of, building your own personalization approach. What are you going to do that's going to stand out as a way for people to recognize that you are making it personal for them? Define that relationship with wellness. Again, we see the next generation consumer building relationships with their own wellness, with wellness brands. We see it even more broadly. What is your role in the wellness equation, and how are you going to, again, uniquely stand out in your ability to complement someone's wellness journey? And then finally, stop ignoring the role of listening to people. So you're all here listening to us today. Hopefully that has provided a lot of great insight. But again, listening to your consumers, listening to your peers, inside and outside of your organization, these are all keys to the future. So thanks everyone for spending the time. We'll jump into some questions and answers, but if you want to dig deeper into this, you want to become a member of the Humanizing Brand Experience collective and dig into the data that we might have on your brand, or have the data collected next year, please reach out and we can talk more about what that looks like.
Absolutely. Now we have a ton of great questions in the chat and that were submitted prior. So I'll take the first one, which is in relation to the rankings. Lots of people asking, how is the brand score calculated? What is the ranking system? Based on what particulars? Is there a fact sheet for how you calculate the top brands? I mean, there is a lot behind that ranking system. In the full publication, which is available and out there, you can actually see all of the drivers that we evaluate each brand on. But essentially what we do is we have consumers in each market in the study evaluate brands they're familiar with. And they evaluate each brand on around 50 plus different attributes that we know drive consumer behavior and feed into that brand model. And those attributes fall into those 4 dimensions that I touched on earlier. So there's emotional drivers, intellectual drivers, sensorial drivers, and behavioral drivers. We take all of those consumer ratings, plug them into the model, it creates a score, and we just order all of the brands based on that score output from the model, and that's how we get to the ranking. We do also weight the scores based on market engagement. You saw earlier on that different markets have different level of healthcare engagement. So that is something else we do factor into the scoring mechanism. But subscribers to the study who actually access the data, they kind of get all of that intricate detail so they can action on their brand performance and go beyond just seeing the ranking in this publication. So I hope that helps answer the question. I know there's a lot more behind the model and the scoring than that, but I'm conscious of time here. One of the questions for you, Dave, I'd like to ask you that was submitted prior to the webinar is, what strategies have you found most effective for leveraging personalized brand experiences to improve engagement and outcomes in the healthcare sector?
Yeah, Grant, actually, I think that goes back to the case that you talked about with virtual health. It's taking that extra step of taking the attitudinal segmentation and actually applying it to real databases and real CRM, so that you can actually then build your messaging, build your creative to be targeted at those groups, to be targeted at those types of mentalities with the right call to action, the right next steps, and ultimately driving that type of engagement that for some people might be the difference between dodging or finding that easy moment of access when they need it for a doctor dodger.
Absolutely. Another question was submitted, and I can take this one as it's a bit more on the research side. How would you recommend creating a typing tool for a primary care facility that also includes physical therapy, pediatrics, diagnostics, and after hours care? And I think the answer to that is, again, don't think about building a typing tool based on your services, think about building a typing tool based on humans and human needs. People don't have a relationship with the service, they have a relationship with their health and wellness. And that's the approach that we take by taking our segments and then working with healthcare organizations to apply them to their databases. You can start to fuse the dots between service line and attitude. And that's when you get to really powerful personalized content. If you just jump to service line messaging without understanding the human need and how to talk to them, you're missing a massive opportunity there for engagement. Okay,
I also
and
think
then
there's a great opportunity there, just to so much service line messaging almost leaves the brand a bit behind. And really taking the extra step to figure out what is that meaningful connection between what your brand stands for at the highest level and what it means in those service lines and in the specific set of needs that people might have associated with the service line. So I think that's another part of that equation to really make service line marketing work harder.
absolutely. And then this last question that was submitted, and then we'll probably have to wrap up. And I'll give this one to you, Dave, as well, because it connects to your people chapter that you went through. How much do healthcare employees drive a human connection with consumers and impact brand perception and equity?
Yeah, I think it's massive, and that's what so much of this data has shown. And I think it's really intuitive. You can think about the experiences that you've had at at a restaurant or in a retail store where a single person can actually dramatically change your perception of that experience and of that brand overall. And especially then when you start having similar experiences with different people. So Chick-fil-A is probably one of the best examples out there. Don't all those people always seem so eager and helpful and friendly? And that's really become part of their brand identity. And so I think that same philosophy needs to be applied across the health systems about how do we actually leverage our humans to make those human connections for our brands, because they are so strong and important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the thing we always say is your people are your brand. And it's just interesting, even the type of work that we do now, we do so much more brand work, helping healthcare organizations leverage brand to attract talent and engage employees and improve culture. And that's because, your people are so important. They are the front line in terms of that brand engagement, that brand touch point. So love that question and love the kind of discussion we've had around it today. And I want to be respectful of time and close out for today. And thank you all for listening to us as we go through these insights, and also thank our friends at the forum for giving us the platform and opportunity to have this conversation today. I'll hand it back to Daniel just to close us out of this session.
Thank you, Grant. I'm sure the audience joins me in thanking you and Dave for that terrific discussion. Thanks also to all of you in our audience for carving out time to join us for such an important conversation. Please note that if you asked a question that we weren't able to get to, we'll do our best to get a response to you. The forum will also be sending out a link to the webinar recording in the next few days, so be on the lookout for that. Finally, be sure to give us your feedback by completing the evaluation survey as you exit the webinar. We look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Check the forum website at healthcarestrategy.com for details. And mark your calendar for the 2025 Healthcare Marketing and Physician Strategy Summit in Orlando from April 30th to May 2nd. We hope you'll join us for our 30th year. That concludes today's program. Thank you and have a great day.